Hello, everyone. We are now at 10 o'clock, so we will get started here. My name is Caroline Coombs. I'm do marketing with Wavefront. I'm glad you can join us for our webinar today. I'm just going to take care of a few quick housekeeping items before we get going. So first of all, if everyone can hear me, if you would please type a hello in the chat box so that we can make sure our sound is working. Perfect. Thanks, guys. We also have Chris, who is going to be on. Chris, if you will just unmute and say hello, make sure people can hear Chris as well.
Hey, guys.
Perfect. So just so you all know, we will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have questions as we do the presentation and the demo, feel free to just type them in the chat box and we will get to them at the end. Also, for your information, we are recording the session. So we will send that out to you afterwards so that you have, you can rewatch it or share it. So with that, I'm going to pass things off to Chris.
Alrighty, thank you. Hey guys, my name is Chris Clark. I'm a sales engineer at Wavefront by VMware. Today I'm going to be going over 5 minutes of slides or so I won't bore everybody completely to death. And then we're going to jump straight into demo. And like Caroline said, we're going to leave the end of it open for a little bit of Q&A. So the first thing I want to talk about is why Wavefront, what brings the need for metrics monitoring, right? So today in modern architecture, we've seen a rise of containers and microservices, which of course bred continuous delivery and DevOps going mainstream. And then today, in 2018, what we have are all of these microservices and containers that are kind of all over the place. And it lends itself to being fragmented and hard to monitor and keep track of. And so that's really the problem of sorts that Wavefront seeks out to solve. So enter Wavefront, and that's actually what we do, right, is monitoring applications, containers, microservices, really anything that's a time series-based metric that you want to send us and have unified monitoring and tooling around. So some of the benefits of having a platform like Wavefront are going to be seeing hidden trends sooner, alerting on anomalies earlier, and troubleshooting and iterating faster. Now, as you guys are going to be seeing throughout the demo today, we do have a unified front end that everybody's going to be able to use, whether you're a business user, you're DevOps, you're an engineer, or anybody really in between. It brings everybody together, so when you're on that same phone call, everybody can be seeing the same data, speaking the same language, and it makes that conversation flow just a little bit easier, so everybody's not digging through their own specific set of tools. So it's going to be, what we have, the 4 main things we're going to talk about today are going to be advanced query-driven analytics. Now, don't let that scare you off. I know SQL, but I'm notoriously awful at SQL. This is probably my favorite feature of the platform because it's very simple. It feels like it's JavaScript. It's a very mature and robust query language, and you don't have to worry about writing any funny syntax in there. I'm going to be showing you guys some customizable and shareable dashboards. We'll talk a little bit about scale and availability, and finally, we'll talk about intelligent alerting for proactive monitoring. So this is the architecture, right? I don't know how many architecture calls you guys have been on, but I like this slide because it's a lot more simple than a lot of these architecture discussions that we typically have. Really, how the Wavefront platform works is it's going to be agent-based. So on the container, the machine, whatever it is you're monitoring, you're going to have an agent doing the collecting of that information. It's going to then send it over to a Wavefront proxy, which does exactly what it sounds like. It proxies that information over to the platform being Wavefront, and then finally you can go ahead and visualize that time series based metrics over there in the platform. Now you can also send metrics via APIs. You can send them over via logs over TCP or FileBeat. And if you're on AWS, Cloud Foundry, Google Platform, you can actually skip the first couple of steps and send data to Wavefront directly because we are built on AWS. So I'm not going to go over all of the things that you guys see here. Just a rough idea of what we're looking at is that we integrate with a lot of different things out of the box. A few that I use quite a bit are going to be Java, Apache Tomcat, Apache. We can even alert out to Slack, as well as some OSs and hypervisors like Linux, obviously VMware, Windows, and a few others. So this is a comprehensive list. I'll show you guys the page that has all of our integrations as we're going through the demo. So we have a number of different customers. Again, I don't want to bore everybody to death, but we have Box, Space Ape. We're in the energy industry, as you can see in the bottom right, and then Fashion ID. So with that said, we got the slides out of the way, and we can go straight into our demo. So what you guys are looking at here is the Wavefront platform. This is going to be a dashboard. It's a typical dashboard that you guys might see after you guys have deployed it. You're sending metrics to Wavefront. What this dashboard is visualizing is AWS data. Now we'll start at the top, move our way down. Just keep in mind that our queries are parameterized, so we can switch between availability zones up here. We can even switch between production and development, UAT, whatever you guys call it in your environment, and it really make this dashboard pop from a parameter standpoint and reusability. Now, why I like showing this dashboard is to show how easy it is to use, again, both from business user to developer and everybody in between. This is going to allow us to really segment things out into their own sections. Up top, what we have here is an overall section. When we scroll over some of these charts, we're showing, okay, here is some CPU load average by availability zone. We're even bringing in some metadata saying, here's where we have a code deploy. We can see that during that code deploy time, we've had reduced usage of the CPU, and that gets populated among the other metrics, whether it's CPU load by availability zone, latency by availability zone, or any number of these other metrics. Now, I want to show you guys my favorite dashboard feature here. It's very easy to miss if you're not looking for it. But if we wanted to zoom in on this section where we are deploying the code, maybe there's a problem in the app server or the database, and we want to take a look at that window of time for those metrics. Instead of going and hunting and pecking for that specific area that we've zoomed in on, what I'm going to do is zoom in on this area, and we'll go ahead and sync all of our charts together. And it's going to do that across my charts. Now, this isn't something you guys have to code. It happens by default out of the box. You'll have this type of functionality, right? So we'll go ahead and collapse some of these sections, take a look at a few of these other pieces. Again, we have some app server data coming out of our instance. Database query times, what we have the databases down here, and we can even jump into individual charts from the dashboard should we choose. Now, another really powerful thing about this dashboard is we can actually short link, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, the dashboard that we're looking at here today, and send that short link off to external people if we should so choose. So now that we have an idea of how to use the dashboard, how to kind of navigate around what we can do, let's get into a couple different use cases here. So I just opened up a new tab. What we're looking at here is CPU load across several different clusters. And at first glance, there's kind of a lot of noise. So we want to be able to make sense of this data, right? I'm going to show you guys how you can do that with just a couple clicks of the mouse through our query builder, and how we can then go ahead and send our results off to others via that short link we had talked about. A couple of notes before we get started is this is the metric that we are using. We're actually doing a little bit of filtering down here on the host. So we're doing cluster asterisk, so you can do regex on these queries themselves. Now, this is our query builder down below. If you want to or need to use actual query as you're following along with my mouse clicks, it's actually going to build out the query itself below. So the first thing I want to do is clean up all of the noise and average all those series down to a singular series. We can do that by coming over here and aggregating. We'll go ahead and average it out. And notice how quick that happened. The reason this is happening so fast is the architecture in the background. This is a very powerful feature of Wavefront, is your data is constantly being moved around. The architecture is really ingenious, right? It's either in RAM or solid state or traditional spinning platter or back and forth, and we're moving that data based on how much it's being used. So we're able to aggregate all of those data points down immediately, thousands of data points down to an averaged series. So now that we have this average series out, we can see a little more clear. Here's our code deploy. We have a little bit of performance degradation in the CPU. We have a general uptick. Now, from here, what we can do is use that short link, open a ticket, maybe talk to some engineers in Slack. But the first thing any team, QA, engineer, DevOps is going to say is, well, is this intended behavior, right? So how we can do that is we're actually going to copy this query out down here, create a second series, and let's go ahead and do a lag for 24 hours, meaning show the previous day's data versus today's data. And just like that, what we're able to say is, yes, this is something that needs to be looked at. Here's what it looked like yesterday. Here's what it is today after the code deploy. Let's go ahead and now copy the short link, throw it to our open ticket in Jira, and have somebody look at it. Now, again, the devil's in the details here. Some of my favorite features are things that are very easy to miss. When I create this short link and Slack it over to somebody, they don't have to come in here and reinvent the wheel, right? All of these queries are going to persist. Everything that we've done on this data is going to stay, and they can go ahead and see these results as you'd like to present to them. So the next use case that I want to go over today is alert fatigue, right? I don't know about you guys, but myself, if I get more than 2 or 3 alerts, false alerts, within an hour, a couple hour window, I'm going to start ignoring the emails, the Slack messages, right? So that's what we're simulating here. So these individual spikes are artifacts in the data or fake alerts. And if I'm going to get 3 alerts before I'm even off the train when I get to work by 8 a.m., then I'm probably going to immediately start ignoring those, right? So how do we get rid of them? Well, the first thing you might think is to come over here to our query builder, and we could, let's do a moving window, and we could average it out. But if we average it out, you're going to lose some of that context, right? So with just 2, 3 mouse buttons, what we're able to do is say moving average and throw that in maybe 45 minutes. And that's what we're talking about. We're losing that context of the data, right? So instead of using our moving average, we'll come back over here and we'll do a moving median. And on 10 minutes of a moving median, 3 clicks, we're able to smooth out the artifacts in the data, and we're able to say, here's exactly what we needed to alert on, right? So to give you guys an idea of what that looked like prior versus what we just did, let's go ahead and copy my query out on the second series. And we have what we had prior versus the request rate, which is what we're doing today. So again, 2, 3 clicks, whether engineer or business users going to be able to come in here as long as they know the data that they're looking at and remove these artifacts. So here's a point in which I like to pause and show off something else in the product called the integrations. So I showed you that big page, splash page of all the different logos, right? So here's where you can find a lot of these integrations. And now keep in mind, we're continually adding integrations here. These are community driven and internal driven. I think we're pushing about once a month new integrations. So if you want to come over here, maybe bring in some Splunk data, throw Splunk in our filter, it's going to bring you right over here and show you how to set it up. Usually not more than 1 or 2 lines to get things going, right? If you wanted to sign up for a trial today, on a self-service trial today, you could definitely do that. And what's really, really powerful after you sign up is I'm on Linux or OS X, we can come over here, do the setup, and you'll see that we have a little one-liner. And once we copy and paste that guy into our terminal, within 5 minutes, we're going to start seeing metrics coming out of our machine and into the Wavefront platform itself. So the last use case that I wanted to go into today is actually a customer use case. It's a real-world scenario that our support team had. So what we're looking at here is network data from network switches. And our customer came to us and said, we have a problem. We don't know what switch is bad or acting up, but we know that there's a switch that's acting up. Can you guys help us identify it? So what we did was we took all of this data. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a spoiler alert because I've done this demo 1,000 times now. Among all of this noise, this pink line, this is actually what we're looking for. So if you don't have a tool like Wavefront to be able to come in and swivel the data, slice and dice it, it's going to be just awful to try to find this specific point, right? So what our support engineer was able to do was, let's go ahead and get rid of our network rate. And the first thing we tried was, okay, give us some top-bottom data. Well, that really doesn't do anything for us because it's only going to give us, as it says, top bottom. It's going to give us our minimums and our maximums, but the series we're looking for is lost in the filtering in between, right? So the next thought was, well, why don't we use a standard deviation? Well, the standard deviation worked to a degree, and it did highlight the switches that needed to be looked at or replaced. So the problem with standard deviation is that it skews the results after you see a spike in the data, right? So that we see the data here, and it spiked. These are the switches, and we were able to say, okay, here's what needs to be replaced. So we went a little bit further. The engineer who was writing all these queries, now we said, okay, let's do some IQR. IQR is a little bit like standard deviation, but it splits it up over quarters of data, essentially. Again, I'm not a mathematician, so a very crude explanation here. But the point is, the spikes won't affect the baseline moving forward. So by using IQR, we're easily able to say, okay, here is definitely the switch or the switches that need to be looked at or replaced. And because engineers are engineers, we could stop there. We wanted to make it a little bit better. We finally applied a max 3, top 3 by max IQR. And by doing that, we are left with these 3 switches that were acting up and needed to be replaced. So let's, in review, here's what we started with, all of these data points, and here's what we were trying to find, this and a couple others, and here's what we ended up with. Now watch when I check this on how quick that query is to operate on all of this data. So that said, that is my 10,000 foot view of Wavefront, how to use it, what it looks like, a few of the features. I do want to reiterate that trials are free. Go ahead and go out there and sign up, and you can get 15 minutes with me or another sales engineer. And make sure you check out the integration page, and we can chat from there. So with that said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to some Q&A from the audience. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and use the chat. So is there a learning curve, especially with the queries? That's a really good question. You know, I can't say that there's not a learning curve. Everything has a learning curve, but with our queries, there typically doesn't I don't see much of a learning curve. Again, that's because, and I'll share my screen. Let me go ahead and show this back to you guys. When we're working with these, we can come over here and use our query builder straight out of the UI. So whether you're wanting to use a query like we're looking at here right now, or if we wanted to use the query builder UI, we just select our metric, and you'll see we do have auto suggest on the metric names. We can come over here and use our math functions. So I wouldn't say there's much of a learning curve at all on the queries, simply because as long as you know what you're looking for, what functions you want to use, you can use this UI. Or if you want to get very technical with it, you can use the query language itself, which is very well documented on the platform's webpage. So very good question. We go back to our chat here. How many concurrent users can use the tool? I'm not seeing a limit on how many concurrent users. In fact, I don't think there is one. Since we manage that all for you, and it's on AWS, we're able to scale things up and down as needed. So you're asking if gRPC, GBP data, if you can stream it directly to Wavefront, or if it needs to be sent to the proxy. So data needs to be sent to the proxy unless you are on AWS, Pivotal, or Google. Then you can stream it directly into Wavefront. And another good point, just to reiterate on the concurrent users, we do have customers that have hundreds or even thousands of developers that are using the tool concurrently on a daily basis without any problem. What is the load of the agents in the proxy on the device it's on? So I don't have a good direct answer for you, but I will say it's nominal. The reason I can say it's nominal is because in my home lab, I have a proxy running on a original Raspberry Pi, and I'm able to run agents from everything from my Raspberry Pi Zero all the way up to my virtualized lab. So the overhead on the agents of the proxy is nominal. How long is the data retained in Wavefront? So we don't age your data. So our very first customer still today, years later, can go into the product and see their very first data point. And that's another very, very good question. I was asked, is there a way to use an existing query result in another query? Absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. And we'll just use this query here as an example. We're saying that request latency, we'll call it LAT because I'm bad at spelling and I like shortcuts. And we'll go ahead and create a new query. And by using $ brackets, we can use lat, and let's just divide it by 2 to be simple. And we can even use those results in this query, even though we're not displaying these results here. So are there any integrations with Wavefront and VRA? Yes. So there are integrations. I don't have a VRA demo to show today, but I will get back to you and send a direct note on that. So I don't want to misspeak on that piece. And then the other question was a Splunk integration pushing data out of or into Splunk? We are extracting the data from Splunk into our platform, so we are pulling it out of Splunk. Can we send alerts to Splunk? We can send alerts to anything that supports webhooks. And I think I'm seeing questions slow down, so I think we will call it an afternoon for my demo and Q&A.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Like I said before, we will be sending out the recording of this to you all in a follow-up email so that you can rewatch. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to wavefront@vmware.com or visit our website at wavefront.com. You'll see links to the free trial there as well. So yeah, be sure to reach out if you have any questions. And thank you so much. And thank you, Chris.
Have a good day, everybody.